We started with Landslide. I actually wrote the Landslide leveling build guide for Icy Veins, and then we've been testing the Pulverize because we got this juicy legendary power here. Pulverize creates a shockwave that travels forward, dealing actually more damage with the shockwave than the original damage. So up to 260% here on a two-handed weapon. You don't understand how Fortify works and how to build around it. Fortify was really confusing actually to me too. It was, at least. But really the short of it is that like Fortify can just kind of keep building. You can keep stacking Fortify. So even if you have just a little bit of Fortify, as long as you're always in combat, you can just keep like stacking it. But once you're out of combat here, it does drain. So it takes like a few seconds. Like it takes like 5 or 6 seconds after being out of combat for it to drain. So it's really strong if you can just stay in combat and keep stacking your Fortify. And eventually you stack enough Fortify to fill up your entire health bar, right? Once you do that, you get 10% damage reduction. That's really all it is. It's not really that powerful, right? Like I would say, like I like Barrier more, to be honest, but Fortify isn't too hard to get in some builds, and this build kind of relies around a lot of Fortify. So it's just kind of there for the 10% DR eventually. Whereas like Barrier, I feel like is really it's just better to have because Barrier would just protect your HP. Like whereas Fortify doesn't protect your HP, it just reduces the damage you take by 10%. But the reason why we're going heavy Fortify in this build in particular is because Fortify actually increases the damage of your Overpower, which is kind of weird to think, but like Overpower, so this is kind of a synergy. Fortify works well to give you extra damage for your Overpowers, and this build revolves around Overpower, so it makes sense to use as a synergy. Otherwise, I don't think Fortify is really that great. The thing is that with the Pulverize is it doesn't work until you get the legendary here, right? Making a leveling guide that requires a legendary is kind of hard to do. It might not be a good idea. So the idea here I think is to start with the Landslide build that's going to be posted on Icy Veins that I finished writing. And then if you get a key, if you get like a key legendary for another build, then that's when you can kind of switch over to like an endgame build guide. For the Pulverize, this is Pulverize, right? But basically it's for like Landslide's the same almost, but you're going to be using Fierce Storm Strike for both of them. You're going to be eventually trying to grab like the extra spirit generation and the damage here, right? These are important nodes. And then obviously you do either Pulverize, Primal Pulverize, or you do like the Primal Landslide. You go either way, right? And then Cyclone Armor is always going to be a 1-point wonder. Just put it on your bar. And you have the option of like a little bit of flexibility with defensive skills here. I did the shielding here and then the debilitating roar. This is more for like the Fortify here and Fortify here. So the Fortify is more useful on Pulverize because of the damage for Overpower. For Landslide, not as much really. And then you're going to go with like Natural Trample for Pulverize for Fortify, but for Landslide you're probably just gonna go with the Spirit instead, since we don't really care too much about Fortify. I mean, you can try this one too. It'll build up eventually. It eventually just build up to, it's 20% Fortify, so you have to cast it like 5 times. Eventually you will do that if you're just kind of like chaining back and forth between mob packs. You get it. But yeah, this is pretty much like the template. It's very simple, really. It's really simple because you're basically just trying to put extra points, use your extra points in these nodes here to help Landslide. And then you can also do Predatory Instinct in addition to that, right? So it feels like with Druid, it feels like you have a lot of like utility options for sure you can put points into. But for the most part, you have like a lot of extra skill points to use just to level up your core skill and give your core skill more damage. Yeah, Druid is probably, I would say Druid is the most tanky build here in the game. Like, just, even with little investment, like very little investment, Druid is tanky. Try out Druid is a lot of fun, actually. I was actually surprised by Druid. I didn't think I would have it. I thought I was gonna like Necro more, actually. And Necro is okay if you get like the explosive mist item, but overall I think Druid is more flexible and more fun. The big wave, yeah, that's the legendary aspect right here. Yes, I would say it's pretty much like a requirement for the build. I would say that you're gonna be doing Landslide until you can find this legendary. And then you can swap if you want. But Landslide's also very good to stick to if you want to. It just really depends on what legendaries you get, like, right? So it's kind of like a bit RNG dependent. Both Landslide and Pulverize have like good supporting legendaries for them. To a certain degree, like Lightning Storm also has some good ones, and Tornado can also be kind of good too. So yeah, it just really depends on what you find. But you know, just considering no legendary aspects at all, I think Landslide wins. I don't think I even need the Fortify on the charge anymore. Maybe just go for the Spirit on the charge instead. I think there is such thing as too much Fortify. You only really need enough Fortify to get 100% of your HP. So in this case, I think you just go, you know, with this 20%, 20 Spirit generation on Trample. I think that we can get like some pretty massive hits with this Overpower stuff. I think we need to stack some extra like aspects for the separate damage multipliers though. If you start stacking things like the core skill, basic skills grant your core skill, you know, separate damage multiplier. We have the standing still grants us separate damage multiplier. We have damage to like, what's the other one? There's one that's against crowd control. There's another one that gives you another separate damage multiplier when you get more resource than your max. So a lot of that stuff like can be pretty powerful. Or anything that has a separate damage multiplier can be really powerful for a power hit. I think that's the goal. There's even one that gives you like, I think, a separate damage multiplier when you have barrier. So we have a barrier. We could it'd be kind of interesting to see how much damage we can end up just stacking and getting off of one hit. Druid is good, people push us bad. That pretty much sums it up. Yes, yes. A lot of people complaining about Druid, but you know, I think I feel this way about every single class actually. I think that there's no wrong choice in class. There's no wrong choice in class. There's only wrong choices when people build it. When people like, you know, choose their, in particular, you know, starting off, it's the skill tree. There's people are making the wrong choices in the skill tree. Right, which is kind of unfortunate because like, yeah, there's like, for every class I feel like there's skills that are kind of just underperforming and they're just really bad, and if you pick those skills and you try to go for those skills because you just really want to play it because it's, to you, it's appealing or fun or something like that, right, then you're gonna struggle. But if you don't want to struggle, then you kind of have to make the right choices there. Class being gear dependent. Yeah, I mean, the gear dependency can definitely be a factor. For the most part, the gear dependency in this game is getting the right legendary aspects, right? That's what it is. So some builds need, like, they require a specific legendary aspect to work well. And that's kind of the struggle we're having, like, writing guides right now. Especially since we can only really write leveling guides. And we can only really write leveling guides up to level 25, right? So we can't really make leveling guides that require a specific legendary aspect. So right now the leveling guides have to be considering basically no legendary aspects, and there is not really that much variance when it comes to that. Like when you first start a character, there's going to be one really good choice, maybe two. For example, for Druid, it's gonna be Landslide, right? Landslide is the correct choice to make when you first make a Druid. For Necromancer, it's gonna be Bone Spear, maybe Blood Surge as a second to that kind of thing, right? And you can pretty much like find what's the best build to start leveling with for each class, which is pretty much what we've done. Played every single character. But then, you know, sometimes, like in this case with the Druid, I started with Landslide and that was the best start. But then early on, around level 20 or so, I got this legendary aspect to drop. I got Pulverize creates a Shockwave. So once that dropped, it was like, okay, well, this enables Pulverize for me. I would not play Pulverize otherwise. So I was able to switch over to Pulverize and try this out. Struggle is good though. It's what you remember about D2. Yeah, no, I definitely have had fun with weaker builds and classes. Like in particular, right, like Barbarian. Barbarian to me is probably like the worst starting. And I struggled with Barbarian a bit, but it was actually just a lot of fun because of that. Being able to like have a challenge for once, right? Yeah, for sure. I get it. Yeah, I agree. The problem is like when you struggle and then like you compare yourself to like what other people are doing and other people are just like blasting through it and you're like lagging behind them. That's when it kind of feels bad, is that kind of comparison. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Barbarian, you have the choice of doing bleed. You can go like the flay and rend and then rupture eventually, or you can do the holder style or upheaval. Those are pretty interchangeable. They're basically the same template, whether you do upheaval or holder. But you can do one of those too. They're decent, but they still kind of fall behind other starting builds for other characters. And it kind of sucks because like I know a lot of people want to do Whirlwind because Whirlwind is very iconic to the Diablo series and just ARPGs in general. Just spin to win, right? So people want to do that because that's just always been a popular playstyle, the spin and win playstyle. But if you try to do Whirlwind with a starting Barb, you are just gonna struggle so hard. Like it's the worst thing ever, man. Mars just feels so bad for Druid. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why I'm doing Lightning Strike is Storm Strike is OP, dude. Like yeah, don't do Mar at all. Don't do Mar at all. Yeah. In comparison, like, Storm Strike gives so much. The problem is Storm Strike is so damn good. It's like, I don't see you using anything but Storm Strike, because Storm Strike gives you 25% damage reduction, 15% chance to immobilize, 50% chance to vulnerable. It's just, it's a busted base. It's busted for a basic skill. Not in terms of damage, but just utility. I think ultimates in general are kind of a trap. For the most part, I think most builds don't benefit from an ultimate as much as they do other, like they benefit more from something else other than an ultimate. Some builds will like be able to utilize an ultimate well, especially maybe endgame. I can see it being more of a thing for endgame builds, because you can kind of stack things like cooldown stuff to get more ultimates and that kind of thing. But I think, you know, I've written 9 leveling build guides now, and of the 9 leveling build guides, well, I mean, the majority of build guides I've written don't have an ultimate. They just don't benefit from an ultimate. There might be, I mean, there's definitely going to be some builds that just completely revolve around an ultimate. That's going to happen, but it's going to take some scaling, right? It's going to take some, it's going to be endgame stuff, because you can get like ultimate damage. You can get stuff, some classes have ways to cool down their ultimates pretty rapidly, kind of thing, and then you just stack ultimate damage. You just like, you can maybe cast your ultimate way more often that way and just have it deal a whole ton of damage, which seems kind of fun actually. It's gonna be more of like a big burst heavy, rotation heavy style, play style kind of thing, where you just build up to this big ultimate as much as possible. That's gonna be fun actually. That sounds like right up my alley, where we just that's definitely suits my playstyle. I'm trying to find the other Pulverize aspect, and I'm trying to find the other Landslide that makes it hit an additional time. I'm trying to find those aspects, yeah, so that we can actually use them. They're build defining aspects, right? You also wanted to have your class fantasy of being a Werebear. Right, yeah, and I totally get it, man. Like, Yeah, it sucks when like you want to play a specific way and the option and the way that you want to play just sucks, right? It sucks to suck for sure. The only thing that I can like give a little hope to you is that like you may be locked into doing landslide at the beginning in order if you want to actually like play efficiently, but you can switch over to the build that you want to play later once you start to get more the legendaries, the aspects that you need for it, right? So yeah, there might be hope at the end of the tunnel, basically, like end game. There might be hope for you. If everything works accordingly, if everything's balanced well, you'll be able to switch eventually. The AoE is small, yeah, it takes a little finesse to get it to work. It's not easy to use. The way you use Landslide is you have to practice using it like it's a melee skill. And that way it will help you. You drag enemies around, they'll come to you. When they come to you and they group up around you, use Landslide in melee range, right next to you, right in front of you, and your land more hits that way. That's how you get used to, that's how you make Landslide work. What's Sork build for hardcore? Ice shards. Ice shards. Yeah. Ice shards is super tanky because you get a bunch of barrier with it. It synergizes well. You just want to get a lot of barrier with ice shards because when you have barrier, your ice shards get extra damage. So it's already a good synergy. And you know, having freeze and chill is just a really good defensive mechanic for you. So yeah, that's the ice shards build is on icy veins. I wrote that one. If their resource regenerated by itself, sure, yeah. That would be nice, but I think they're trying to make different, they make the resources a little more different, right? They have to have their own kind of identity. For example, like Barbarians have rage that degen, but they actually get rage from taking damage, so that's like the upside to it. Druids don't have passive regen on their resource, but their generators generate more. So if you compare like the generators and the amount of spirit you generate, the generators give you more resource than like generators from necromancer or from Sork. So that's how it's kind of balanced. In PvP, all classes regenerating resource would be inherently at an advantage. I mean, I don't know if I don't think that you can just say like a class is going to be stronger than another because of their resource, how their resource mechanics work, right? Like, there's so much more that goes into PvP balance than how their resource mechanics work. Like, so much more, right? Like, okay, fine, you're right. Maybe druids are a little bit at a disadvantage with resource in PvP, but is that really going to be the end all be all for balance in PvP? No. Is it going to be the second thing? Is it going to be the third thing that's important in PvP? No, it's going to be like, there's going to be so many things that are more important than how resource works in PvP. So I wouldn't worry about that, man. I really would not worry about that. You know, you can't like, with that kind of logic, right? You would basically try to make every class the same as every other class for the sake of balance, and that's just not how things work. It's a give or take, right? It's like there's pros and cons to everything. You don't want every class to be the same just because for the sake of balance. You want all the classes to be as different as possible while balancing everything, the whole picture. While balancing the whole picture, you balance the whole picture, but you try to make things different, right? So that's kind of the logic behind it. Well, I don't think PvP is like a major focus for D4 yet, so you know, we have to see. It really just depends on how much they put into like trying to balance PvP and maybe even giving us more PvP content. Right now, we just have like the one public zone where we have open PvP for, so we don't really have a lot of PvP content to go off of. Right now there's nothing competitive about it really. I mean, you basically just have open world PvP, and it's kind of like a PvE. You farm, you can do some farming there to do some quests there, and then you can get jumped while you're doing quests kind of thing. So it's not something that's esports or anything like that, right? Although there will be people taking PvP serious, for sure. There'll be people that take PvP way more serious than others. I'll probably be one of those people because I'm kind of a PvP enthusiast, so I'm going to be definitely doing quite a bit of it probably. Imagine if some of the quest lines in the PvP zone, where they already said that the PvP zone is completely optional. Yeah, they're not gonna make you go into there, because there are some people that just do not want to PvP. So, and I respect that. I respect that. I think that some people that just don't want to PvP shouldn't have to PvP. There's some PvP rewards, yeah. It's good to have some rewards with PvP for sure, but then at the same time you want to make it so it's not like something you can't get elsewhere. You want to make it so that like people don't feel like they have to do it if they don't like PvP. Yeah, I was big into PvP in Lost Ark, but that was mainly because like, well, Lost Ark actually had like a competitive esports scene around it, and it was very organized with the arena. I really hope that they eventually do something like that for D4. You know, I would like to see like arena or battlegrounds, that kind of thing. Stuff. Oh, here it is. Finally, I got it. Okay. Pulverize is now an Earth scale. After casting Pulverize, tectonic spikes continue to deal 432 damage over 2 seconds. So, this one... Oh, okay. It just kind of leaves an AoE afterwards, a ground effect afterwards. So this is one of the cases where they give you like a static number and it's not a weapon damage percentage. 432 damage though, so Pulverize does... It's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's not crazy good because like the Pulverize itself is already doing like 669 to 817. And then that 669 and 817 there, that is being, that gets like a 2.5 times multiplier for the Shockwave, right? So the Shockwave is doing 2.5 times that, which is quite a bit compared to this 432. That's not really that much. It's not really that much damage here on this. But changing Pulverize to an Earth scale will have some benefits for us. So I think that's the more important aspect on this, is the fact that it turns into an Earth scale. They can stack, yeah. So I need to extract this. I need to extract this and put it on something else. This is actually pretty key. It's going to help me quite a bit, I think. We can also invest, so we can get some more aspects that are Earth aspects, and then we can also invest into Earth, more points into like Earth aspects in the skill tree. Although it might be kind of hard to get all the Earth aspects in addition to what we're already doing. That might be more of something that happens when we can get past level 25 and get more skill points. But I need to extract this, and then we need... I think I have the other aspects in here. Earth scales deal more critical strike damage to crowd control enemies. That's one of them. Although we don't really have like... We could try to like do stuns, but we don't really have it yet. It could be something... It's definitely an option for us. We have Earth scales slow. Oh wait, yeah, just stack those two together, right? So we get the crowd control here with the slow, and then we get 43% more critical strike damage. That's gonna be this is a good combo. This is basically like a 3 aspect combo we're using here. And then there's one more I think too, right? Resource when you crowd control an enemy. This is also very good for us now because we're gonna be slowing. So every time we hit an enemy with our Pulverize, we're gonna get the slow applied, and we're also gonna get resource back. Yeah, this one's gonna apply also. Because we're using Storm Strike. Storm Strike is a storm skill. It's our basic storm skill. We're going to cast that to give our Pulverize, that is now an Earth skill, extra crit strike damage here as well. So there are actually a lot of aspects here that combo into this one here. We're looking at like 5 aspects that are comboing there. And then the other one is the +2 I have that somewhere. Where's the +2 to Earth skills? Oh, here it is. Okay, yep, there it is. Okay, so we have So this is +2, right? If it's on an amulet, it gets a 50% bonus. So that's where you're getting the +3 from, Dave. Yeah, if you put it on an amulet, I think it's +3. Yeah, it says +3. +3 if you put this on the amulet because of the 50% bonus. So what do we want for the 50% bonus for, though? I feel like we don't really need it for this because we just get a little extra damage here, but this damage on the tectonic plates isn't really worth it, I think. I think we're better off getting the extra +1 from this here. Or you just get like bigger multipliers on this, right? So like this is 43%, but it becomes 65%. The extra +1 is going to be... It's going to be somewhere around like a 5 or 6% damage increase, I think. Because the damage increase you get for additional ranks starts to kind of go down. It kind of goes down as you get more and more of it. So it starts at like 10% for the first point, for like rank 2, for level 2. But then when we're getting to like level 7 or level 8, it's going down. It's going down. It's not 10% anymore. It's not 10% total damage increase, right? That's what we're talking about. 10% total damage increase. Ideally, I want something that's just a separate multiplier. Like, this is one, right? This is one that we have. But it's on my gloves right now, so it's on the wrong spot. Because this can stack up to 50%. It stacks up to 50%. So we're talking about a 50% increase of 50%, which is like if you do a 50% increase of 50%, that's going to be 75 total, right? So that's going to make it a 0.75 multiplier from a 1.5 multiplier. So that would be a 16% increase if we do it on an amulet. So that's what we want, something like that. Oh, and now that it's an earth scale, do we shift around our points on the tree? Because we can do this stuff, right? This is 5% increased damage. So we can get 5% increased damage per point here. More Fortify. There's only 4% increased damage when we have more Fortify there too, which we will. The problem is that I'd rather put points into this one. This one is 10% damage per point with a greater cost. So the problem here right now is that I think we're kind of strapped for points, so I don't think this changes. This is something that you would do if you were able to go past level 25. If you were able to go past level 25 and have more skill points, then you would do this. That's you know, that ground effect really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, I don't think. It's not what the aspect is good for. See how much tick damage that does? That ground effect? And we knew it was low, right? We knew it was low because compared, if you do the math and you look at the numbers, the damage of this dot ground effect is very low in comparison to the actual pulverized damage. But I just did a bunch of crafting, and I gotta say the crafting system is quite nice to have. It's feeling pretty good. There was a 4K crit there. Wow, okay. It's starting to hit harder. It's starting to hit quite a bit harder here. My first character on release. So I thought it was Lightning Soak. Chain Lightning Soak is really good. That was like my first character I played. That was the first character and build I played in the last beta. Not last weekend. The beta before last weekend. When I first played and tested everything. And wrote, you know, kind of put everything together. So Chain Lightning Soak was definitely a contender, but then, you know, Twisting Blades Rogue kind of stole my heart, so... Because of how complicated it is. Chain Lightning is really good, and I've always been a Sorc player, but Chain Lightning is a bit too simplistic for my taste. Oh, speaking of, we found it. Okay, this is exactly what I wanted. Yeah, so scales deal up to X% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit when you have full primary resource. This is another one. This is another separate damage multiplier. We can build up to full resource and make sure we cast our Pulverize at full resource to benefit from this separate multiplier. This one's good to have. Overpower damage, crit strike damage, damage to close enemies. Wow, that ring is crazy. The 36% crit strike damage perhaps might not be as strong as the separate multipliers. Yeah, this one's not going to be as strong as the separate multipliers. Because if we drop this, we don't need the slow. But basically, we'll be better off dropping the slow and this one for in exchange for separate damage multipliers. And then we might as well just drop this too eventually. Basically, you always want to build to like max resource before you dump. Right, the legendary drop rates are boosted for the beta right now. You cannot expect to get any specific legendary when you're leveling on launch. You just can't. And that's kind of the challenge right now for us, because when we're writing leveling guides right now, and people want these leveling guides for these different builds, but we can't expect to get them. So we can't expect to get those legendaries. So yeah, the leveling guides I wrote are all kind of like assuming you don't get a legendary at all. Most likely you won't. You might get super lucky and you might get like a really good legendary that enables another build, and then you can switch to it when that happens, right? So for example, what happened with me, for me in this particular case, leveling Druid, I started with Landslide because that's the best build to use without any legendaries. And then around level 20 I got lucky and the Pulverize shotgun aspect dropped for me, and then I was able to switch. Am I concerned that bombs will be OP endgame because they have 4 weapon slots? No, I'm not. That's their specialty. That's part of their specialty, basically. Every class is going to be balanced. You can balance other classes with other specialties, right? Like you can, like other. So it's not just, it's not going to come down to just extra stats on weapons. You hope Butcher doesn't spawn in hardcore? Wait, what? I really hope that Butcher spawns in hardcore. I can't wait to see all the hardcore rips from Butcher. If you're gonna play hardcore, you better be prepared to shit your pants or start running if you hear fresh meat. I think Druid is the most tanky, yeah. I think Druid is. And especially if you just consider, like, if you don't even go out of your way to build tanky, Druid just is tanky. Like, it's very easy to get tankiness on Druid with little investment. It's mainly due to the fact that Druid gets another 25% damage reduction from Storm Strike, right? That's pretty massive. And then we also have the Cyclone Armor, just passively giving us damage reduction there also. So all that damage reduction is very easy. Like if you're talking about like putting 1 point in Storm Strike and using lightning using Storm Strike and putting 1 point in Cyclone Armor, that's very low investment, right? Like that's barely anything. It's barely anything you have to invest to be like super tanky. And that allows you to focus on other things like damage. You didn't notice this was a cat? This is indeed a cat. This is a cat. It's not a pillow. It's not a pyro cocaine. This is a cat. Hi. Oh, yeah. Stretch. Sorry, Fudge. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to wake you. You can go back to bed. Druid's Fear is, to me, Druid Fear is like the most tanky character starting off. It has actually decent damage if you go for Landslide right away. It levels pretty decently at the beginning, while being just really tanky, just really easily, right? So, I don't think Druid is a bad pick at all. Lack of knowledge could be the problem. It could be. It could be. I mean, I think there is like fair like criticism here maybe with the Druid. I think that a lot of the other skills need buffs. There could, and that's the major issue I think, is when people like want to play one specific build, one specific skill, and that skill ends up being just terrible for starting off, right? That's where the problem lies, I think. This isn't unique to Druid though, right? Like for example, like people trying to go Whirlwind Barb at the beginning, they're gonna struggle hard, right? They're gonna struggle hard. Like there's a lot of starting core skills for all the classes that are just really bad choices starting at the beginning, and that's the problem. Yeah, I guess if I had to give some constructive criticism feedback here, right? The number one thing for me is trying to balance all the rest of the core skills in the game for starting characters more, right? Because it just seems like there's such an imbalance between different skills starting off. And yeah, I get it, like, you know, a lot of skills might not be good until later on, and they might need certain legendary aspects to be enabled. But I think at the very least they should have decent like starting base damage that you can use at level, you know, at level 3. At level 4, when you put your first point in your core skill, you should be able to put it into whichever core skill you want and do decent with it. Are hardcore players going to be able to do hard world bosses? Of course. Of course. Because if you're a true hardcore player, you are going to make sure that you're well prepared for the fight before you do it, right? Right? Hardcore players? Any hardcore players in chat? You're not going to go and try to do the word boss Ashava at level 25 knowing that Ashava knowing that Ashava is going to one-shot your character. You're not going to do that, right? You are going to gear up your character, make sure you have adequate toughness and defenses, and maybe even immunity buttons and that kind of thing. And then you're going to prepare as much as you can. And then when you're ready, or when you deem yourself ready, you're going to go after a Shava, and then you're still going to die. So that's how it's going to play out. But that's what makes it fun, right? That's what makes hardcore fun. If you're not down for the risk, if you're not down for like the potential dying to something that's really difficult, I don't think you're a true hardcore player. Accepting your morality is part of playing hardcore. Yes. I used to be a hardcore player in D3 quite a bit actually, and you know what ruined D3 hardcore for me was when they started to give everyone so many cheat deaths. So many cheat, like eventually like 2 cheat deaths for everyone, sometimes even 3 cheat deaths for classes, right? That's when hardcore stopped being hardcore. And there are a few cheat deaths in the game right now, like Sork has a cheat death and immunity, like they have like a cheat death they can do. But it seems like I don't think there's a it doesn't seem like the cheat death is part of the game, like for every class or anything like this, right? So I think it's gonna be okay. I think hardcore will still be fun. I really don't want them to ruin hardcore like they did for D3. How would I rate all classes? In terms of what? In terms of my personal preference for fun, or in terms of like fastest 1 to 25, or strongest after fully geared at 25? What I prefer to play? Okay. Rogue Sork. I think Druid. I think I'm falling in love with Druid. I think Druid is winning my heart. Rogue Sork slowly climbing. Druid is slowly climbing up there. I think Druid is third for me now. Rogue, Sork, Druid, Barb. Yeah. Necro, right? My first guide I wrote for Icy Veins and put up on Icy Veins, Chain Lightning Sork. It was the first build I played in the first beta I played. And not this week, not even the last weekend, even before that, like the beta before the last weekend. I was saying Chain Lightning Sork was OP for a long time, and people didn't realize that until last weekend. The first build I played, first guide I wrote, it's also my most popular guide on Icy Veins right now, is Chain Lightning Sork. No, of course not. We don't balance the game around 25. But the best we can do is try to, like, I think that, you know, I think the best thing to do though is still to make it so every core skill is like a decent choice at least. It's still kind of viable to pick, like, you know, what you want to play, because I think a lot of people want to play a certain way, and right now it seems like sometimes playing the skill you want, or the fulfilling the archetype or playstyle you want to do is just sometimes the wrong choice, and it's just bad. So I think no, you don't balance the game around 25, but at the very least, when you first get to like level 5 or something, you should be able to pick whichever core skill you want and use that core skill without like completely struggling.